Covering the Universal Orlando Resort for over 5 years, you are listening to the unofficial Universal Orlando podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome to episode 196 of the unofficial Universal Orlando podcast. I am your host Lee, and joining me as always is Charity.
Hello!
And Darren.
What's up, Internet?
And doing his best impression of faking excitement over Universal Orlando Resort, Mr. Hunter Fagan.
Hey, nice to be back. I'm going to ignore those comments.
2 shows in a row.
Whoa.
Don't forget, UK listeners, May is the month to go and leave us an iTunes review, but please subscribe and rate the show while you are there, and you will have the chance to win a $25 gift card. So this show is the one that, if you listened 2 weeks ago, that Hunter mentioned at the beginning that we should have been doing them, and that is our interview with Gary Goddard, because on the 27th of April, it was the 20th anniversary of T2 3D opening at Universal Studios Florida, so it was the ideal time to get Gary back on, because I think if you remember back when we had him on to talk about Jurassic Park, at the end of it, he was like, we need to do this again, and we need to talk about Terminator 2 3D.
Yes.
So here it is. Hi, Gary, once again, thanks for taking the time to join us on the unofficial Universal Orlando podcast.
Sure.
When we had you on last time, when we were talking about the Jurassic Park River Adventure, at the end you said we needed to do this again, and the one thing that you really mentioned about having quite a lot of excitement to talk about was Terminator 2 3D. And as I think it was, 4 weeks ago now, it was the 20th anniversary of the ride opening at Universal Studios Florida, we thought now was the perfect time to have you back on.
Great.
So take us back to when those first meetings happened with Universal. You know, what did they come to you with?
Well, actually, I got a call from Jay Stein, and he said, come over, I want to talk about something. And he said, I want to put a stunt show based on Terminator in the old Conan Theater. And I said, okay, sounds great. And so no one really knew what that meant, and I went back to my office and promptly got a laser disc of T2 3D and watched the laser disc several times. One cool thing about Jim Cameron films is, you think you're only going to watch 1 or 2 scenes, then he just draws you in, and suddenly you've watched 45 minutes. You're like, oh, yeah, I just really wanted to look at that chase scene. But anyway, so what I quickly determined was that the Terminator 2, and as we got into it, we found out they only had the rights to Terminator 2, not the first Terminator movie. So we had to pretty much stick to the T2 mythology. And the more I got into it, the more I realized that movie is just one great chase sequence after another. The chase sequences are disguised as different things, like a chase through a hospital, for instance, but of course the chase through the river, the river washway, that's obviously a chase. Right. The helicopter after the truck it's just, and then I suddenly was going, oh my God, well, how do we turn this into a stunt show? Because everything here is like moving, and at first it was like, do we put it in the hospital? Do we do this? Do we do that? And I kept thinking stunt show, which means you're thinking of pyrotechnics, and you're thinking of people punching it out, and high falls and stuff like that, none of which is really a big part of Terminator 2. It's a whole different thing. So, I really pondered over it, and I looked at those videos, and we kept trying to come up with the right idea, and nothing was coming because my thinking was still, he had said stunt show. So stunt show sends you off in a certain direction. So we were engaged, and we had about 3 or 4 weeks to come up with the basic concept. And by 2 days before the presentation, we did not have a concept.
Oh.
And actually, Adam Bizark was working for me then. And Adam, actually, I was trying to involve him, and he had no ideas. And he actually said, we had this meeting 2 days before. I was like, okay, well, all these ideas are crappy. Everything I've come up with and you've come up, it's all just crap. This doesn't really work. It's going to be stupid. Guys dressed in metal outfits, punching it on stage with an Arnold lookalike. So Adam actually said, well, maybe we just have to go to the client and say, we can't come up with the right idea. And I looked at him and I said, well, you're crazy, because someone else will tell them they can come up with the right idea, whether they can or not. So no way. So I went to dinner that night by myself with my notebook, and I reverted to what a theater exercise that I used to teach in theater workshops when I was putting myself through college. And it comes from Viola Spolin's book on improvisation for the theater. And there's a thing she calls the magic if. And when you can't figure out a character and you can't figure out the scene, the magic if is, well, if you could do anything, if you could do something and forget all the rules, what would you do? And suddenly I had the idea, just popped in my head of the motorcycle coming through the screen. Well, if I could do anything, what if we had a projection of the thing, and I didn't have the story yet. But I had this idea of the motorcycle coming through the screen, and that led me to think about 3D, because I had done other 3D and 4D attractions. And so I was thinking, well, what if it was 3D? If it's coming through the screen, and then it came right out, somehow it would come right out. And I knew that kind of effect had been done with 2D screens before, up at some of the expos, where not a motorcycle, but a person would walk up to the screen in 2D and suddenly come through the screen, and you wouldn't see that moment, and it would look like the person walked right out of the film onto the stage. So knowing that had been done in 2D, I was thinking, well, maybe in 3D we can do it. We can figure out how to bring a motorcycle out, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. I know the basic technology exists, and I think it'll work. But then as soon as I opened my mind up to 3D, and I said, we have this 3D moment, well, if we're going to have 3D, people are going to have glasses on, what else? Well, what if the T1000 could come off the screen in 3D? Those two ideas came to me immediately that night, and I started making notes. And initially, in my first notes, I believe I was thinking of 3D screens all around the audience, 360 degrees,
Wow.
putting them in the middle of this whole thing. So the next day I came back and I pulled Adam and a few other people in the room. I said, okay, I think I have an idea that's kind of interesting, but it's not a stunt show. I'm going to have to convince Jay that it's an action show, but it's not a stunt show exactly, though it may have some stunts in it. But here's the basic idea: 3D, live actors on stage, motorcycle, blah, blah, blah. And I said, this is what I think we're going to pitch, and I've got to put a little more form to it. So we kicked around some ideas there, but basically I knocked out a very quick 3-page, I think it was a 3-page treatment, and we did like 3 quick sketches for me to go to Jay, because I didn't really want to go much further unless Jay Stein would buy into it, because this wasn't exactly what he'd hired us for. It wasn't exactly a stunt show. So I went to Jay and I pitched him with just 3 little sketches and this little treatment. I said, look, Jay, before we go any further, what we're developing here is there's a whole lot of reasons not to do a stunt show, and there's a lot of reasons to do kind of a high-tech action show. And I took him through all the beats. I said, look, T2 is basically 4 chases. Here's the 4 chases. We can't do chases. We can't put a crappy bus on stage and make it look like it's going fast. I mean, just anything you do in this area is going to look bad. It's not made for it. But I have this idea using 3D and live actors, and I don't have the story yet, but I have a few of the big gags that would happen, and here's the basic idea. And I pitched it to him, and he said, I'll never forget, do you think this will really work? And I said, yes, I do, and I don't know how yet, and I think we need to get a framework for the story first, but I just wanted you to be on board. Can we go this direction? Can we use 3D and live actors and create a different kind of stunt show, a different kind of action show? And he said, yeah, go ahead, take it in that direction and see where you get. So the initial idea, I would say, came out of desperation, that you're 2 days before a presentation that you've had a month to work on, and every idea you've come up with is just crappy and stupid and lame. And suddenly I have this notion. And along with that notion, by the way, I said this would be T2 3D. That came up early.
Right.
T2 3D. And so that allowed us the freedom to really now take a few more weeks and develop this idea into something that would be an actual show, an attraction that would work. And once we had the 3D screens, and at first we really, for a while, thought we were going to be 360 degrees. Then I started thinking, well, we don't really need screens behind people. That's not going to buy us anything at this point.
Yeah.
And remember, this was all going to be in the Conan Theater at first. This was going to be adapted into the Conan Theater out here in LA. And for the next month or so, it was with the Conan Theater in mind. And then eventually the concept outgrew the Conan Theater. And yet the idea was so good that we were allowed to pursue that. So that's kind of that's the initial start of what was to become Terminator 2 3D. That's kind of how it started.
It's funny that the initial concept was the motorcycle coming through the screen, because that's the thing that most likely will not work when you see it live. But yeah, they've had a lot of problems on and off with that when I've gone. It's become a thing. It's like you hope and pray that motorcycle's working, so you get to see it happen, because it's so cool when it does. It's definitely a centerpiece of that.
When it first opened, we had some of those days, but they got it tuned up pretty good there after the first month, and it was working very reliably for a long time. But of course, what's it been? It's been over 10 years now. So how many years?
20.
20.
Yeah.
Feeling old. But what's amazing is this doesn't usually happen, but the two core ideas that I originally sold it on, the T1000 coming out in 3D looking for young John, and the motorcycle through the screen, they actually survived. Those actually were two of the key moments in the show. A lot of times when you come up with a key thing to sell something, it doesn't wind up being there, but it did in that case. Also Jurassic Park, although there's another maintenance one because I think they just gave up. But the whole idea of the waterfall and the dinosaur coming through the waterfall just as you make the plunge, that was the original key art that helped sell that whole attraction, and was on every piece of merchandise and everything. That piece of art, I think we did, 6 years before the attraction actually opened, and it still was the key art for all the merchandise after it opened. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it speaks volumes to how good that attraction is, that it is still open all these years. I've said it on the podcast quite a few times. I still say it's the best 4D attraction,
without a doubt.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Well, that's interesting because, see, my philosophy with everything I've done, the Star Trek attraction and T2 and Spider-Man, is to try and play on the fact that people come to theme park attractions now thinking they know what's going on. They know what the pre-show is. They know this is a fake. They know that's a... So the whole idea is to take those, their preset of notions, and then flip it around so they get surprised and see things they didn't expect. And that really works in T23. It really worked, I think, if you ever saw the Star Trek attraction when we beamed you up to the deck. And it certainly works in Spider-Man to this day. The other thing is we try to not write what I call typical theme park things. What I did was Adam really was responsible for the pre-show, and he came up with the little super. That was his.
Right.
And I let Adam run with that because Adam is he. If you're going to write in the theme park vernacular, he's one of the better ones to write that. I handle more of the show, the action, the whole Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 of the main show, and Adam handled a lot of the pre-show, and I think you can see the differences in style and approach.
So Gary, if I may just real quick, so prior to this, I can only think of a handful of 3D attractions like Captain EO that we saw previous. Where did you draw any inspiration from 3D shows that we had seen in theme parks prior?
I think I did the first 3D 4D show. It was the Sensorium in the power plant, and goes all the way back to I think the power plant opened in 1980. Was it 1981, I think? Or
wow.
80,
okay.
80,
yeah.
83 or 84. And we had Scent-O-Vision, we had smells, we had like 18 programmed smells on this kind of carousel projector kind of thing that would seal each of the smells, and it would only come into the path of the air that was blowing towards your nostrils for the synchronized to the moment on the screen. And that's how we actually got multiple smells to each seat. And we had 3D, some really good 3D, and we had vibrating seats, and And I think that was the first attempt to merge 3D film, and it was so long ago. We got a special technical achievement certificate from the Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences because our guys had to develop a show sync system. This is the days before digital, guys. So we had to sync up a laser disc with the sprockets on a film.
Okay.
So that the soundtrack and the show signals that triggered all of the special effects would be in synchronized time. And we invented all of that at a time when there just wasn't anything set up to do that kind of thing. And so we had that experience with 3D 4D, and then we had created another 3D 4D attraction for Sanrio Puroland in their Time Machine of Dreams Theater, and then we did another one for them. So by the time we got to T2, I'd been through 3 or 4 other 3D 4D experiences that, prepared me for this, but we definitely pushed the envelope on this. But then the other answer is, yes, by that time we had seen, I think Muppet 3D Vision had come out after about a year.
I think that was 91 or 90, so yeah.
Yeah, so we saw that, and we saw EO, and I thought of all those, the best one to that point was the Muppet Vision 3D. That was the cleverest, I think.
It's probably the one out of those that's closest to T2 3D, that it's not just that 3D show, that it's got those sort of live elements to it as well.
Definitely.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but T2 3D to me was a different thing, because the other thing is, so now what happens is now we get the concept to the point that Jay says, can you really do this? And that was the basic. We had the pre-show Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 structure, and we had some renderings that kind of showed what it was going to be. And he said, okay, let's get ready to show this to James Cameron, because we have to get Cameron's approval. Because remember, this was a license, and Jay hadn't got the rights yet, because Jay liked to get, in the best sense, he wanted to make sure that he had the right idea and the right concept before he went out and got a license. And so he now went into overdrive to prepare for a meeting with Jim Cameron, because I had known Jim. I had met him already because I had directed Masters of the Universe back when he had just finished, I don't know, Masters of the Universe was 87. I think I met him when I was directing it, so 85, 86. What was he in the middle of? The Terminator? I think he just finished Terminator, maybe. Anyway, so we met on a few occasions, and I knew all about him, and I knew what a perfectionist he was. And I said, Jay, we got to have our act together when this guy comes in, because this is going to be a baptism of fire. And but I said, I do think we have a concept he'll like. We're using the latest technologies. We're using 3D. We're using live actors. We're doing something no one's ever done before. I think it'll appeal to him conceptually, as long as he thinks we're true to his story and his characters and all that. So we began about a 6 or 7 month, maybe 8 months of real development, which Universal, which Jay paid for. By the time we got to Jim Cameron, we had full storyboards of the whole show. We had production renderings by Greg Pro showing the basic production design. We had initial character design concepts for the T1 million character. It was a pretty thorough presentation. When I say storyboards, we must have had, I don't know, 150 to 200 storyboard panels that took you through the entire show.
Awesome.
And prior to Jim, we've gone to what remained of Carelco, which was the producer, but they had gone chapter 11 or chapter 13. They were working under bankruptcy, and we met with the lawyer and with the acting president, and they said, well, we love this, but what does Jim say? And then we went to Gail Ann Hurd, James Cameron's former wife, who actually has the rights for Terminator, and got them in a divorce settlement. And Gail, she was really cool. She loved it. And she said, well, I love this, but what does Jim say? I said to both of them, well, actually, we're going to you guys first before we go to Jim to make sure that you're okay with it. And it was all about, if Jim says yes, we're in. So all that was teed up. So the remnants of Carelco were like, okay, we're good. Gail Ann Hurd was, we're good. It's all up to Jim. So this led to a meeting with James Cameron at the Black Tower here in the basement at a conference room. And it was very tight. It was only, Jay Stein and Sid Sheinberg, and Barry Epson, who was at that time the head of the whole theme park, group, not the operating group, the design side.
Yeah.
And me. And James Cameron was coming from across town, so he was about 30 minutes late. And we're all there waiting for Jim. And so Jim walks in, and he sees all the art and stuff, and sits down. He apologizes for being late, and he goes, "Okay, yeah, we'll see what you got." So I took him through the whole show in about 40 minutes. I went through every board, and he was very attentive. Didn't stop me. Went through the whole thing. Got through the end, and got to the end, and there was like a pregnant pause. Everyone was silent, and I started, that awkward silence. So I said, "So if there's," and Jim kind of raised his hand, like basically say, "Don't talk." So I stopped, and he gets up, and he walks along the storyboards. He's looking at the renderings. He's looking at the storyboards really carefully. The room is quiet, and at first he says, he's looking at the boards. He goes, "These storyboards are pretty good. Look at these." I said, "Greg Pro is really good artist. Yeah, they're great. These are good. These renderings are good." I said, "Thank you." And he said, "Well," and he turned around, standing, looked at the table. He goes, "I just have to tell you, on the drive over here, I kept thinking, who the f*** are these guys with my characters, and what the f*** are they going to show me?" And I was prepared to tell you guys that I hate it all, but I have to say, I'm very impressed and I'm very intrigued. He said, "You guys have, you've got the mythology right. You've got the story right. I like this whole 3D thing. You need to explain more details later, but I like it. And I think you really captured it." He says, "I think you really got it." And then he said, "Not that I can't make it a little better." But it was great. I mean, he really got it, and he went for it. And then as things would progress over time, he really got involved. As you know, it's very rare. Up to that point, at that point in time, no filmmaker. Steven Spielberg was involved, but really as a kind of an overall consultant. He didn't get involved in day-to-day things. Just time to time, you'd have meetings with Steven on Jurassic Park or on Universal Studios Florida projects, and he'd give some comments and notes. But he was mainly making movies. Jim, on the other hand, he really dove in, like he did. Then as we talked about, he said, "What are you going to do with this Arnold thing?" I said, "Well, there's two ways to go, Jim. There's the get stuntmen who look like him and put appliances on, or get Arnold." He goes, "No, you can only get Arnold." I said, "I agree." Except at the movie part. He says, "Okay, I'll talk to Arnold. And what about this and what about that?" And I said, "Well, we've designed this on purpose because we're hoping that you'll get your original stars, Linda and Eddie, involved. But we've designed this so that Eddie is 3 or 4 years older than he was when you made the movie, because he is 3 or 4 years older now. So we've timed this." And he goes, yeah, I get that. That's great. He said, "This is like T2.5." I said, "Yeah."
Yeah.
So he got it all. He got how we thought it through, that we knew Eddie was older, so we had to set it at a different time, and everything. He got it in a minute. Very fast study. And so once we had his approval, it was just a matter of negotiating the deal then with him, and he brought in Arnold, and he got Linda and Eddie to agree to do it, and Arnold to do it, and he brought in Stan Winston to do the effects. So essentially, this really wasn't just a theme park attraction anymore. It really was like a legitimate kind of 23-minute sequel, or if you only take the film part, then whatever it was, a 16-minute sequel to Terminator 2. It really is a piece of the story that fits between T2 and what was going to be T3. So that was pretty cool. And then, of course, as it went forward, Jim Cameron got more and more involved, and it was going to be, the film was going to be directed by one of the special effects guy who'd worked with Jim a lot, and that guy was directing on the first day. But on the first day, Jim was unhappy with what he saw, and he said, "Okay, you sit over there." And Jim took over directing all the film sequences.
Wow.
But by the time it rolled around to actually installation on site, Jim said, I'm completely occupied by Titanic. I can't come. And you're in charge, man. Can you do it? Can you mix the thing?" I said, "Yeah, oh, no problem. Jim, no problem. I got it covered." And his composer, who had done the Terminator films, was surprised. He said, "Well, Jim never lets anyone do the mixes. I did the sound mix. I did everything in post because Jim really wasn't available to do anything." So, but my experience with Masters of the Universe and stuff and everything, and with Captain Power, I know that I know all the mediums, so it's a plus for me. But the actual shoot with Jim was amazing, and that, I think, as you know, is where Jim Cameron discovered 3D.
Yeah.
And at one point on one of the sets one day, actually I know exactly what it was. We were on one of the sound stages, and we were doing the sequences with the hunter killers, the flying hunter killers that they first encountered.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And in a break between one of those shots with the moving cameras, Jim said, he looked at me again, and he goes, "This whole 3D thing, this is pretty cool. I think I'm going to do after Titanic, I'm going to do all my future movies in 3D." And I was like, cool. But I was thinking, yeah, he's just saying that. That's, that's just little chit-chat on the set.
Yeah.
But it was not. He was dead serious.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it quite a lot as well. It's that, I mean, I said that I still think T2 3D is one of the best 3D attractions about, and we've seen a lot of them now that have gone down that 4K projection route, and I still don't believe the actual 3D element's as good as it is in T2 3D. It's more about that depth now.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, this is a problem with filmmakers. Filmmakers tend to think that poking you in the eye is somehow cheap. It's a carnival trick. And but the depth is beautiful. And Jim and I had the discussion. I mean, Jim and I were talking, and he said, "I don't want these things where you poke people in the eye." I said, "Well, Jim, with all due respect, this is a theme park attraction, and people are going to expect a few moments where they get poked in the eye."
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, "All right, well, I'm not going to be doing that in the film part." I said, "Well, I'll do it in the 3-act finale with the big metal guy." And he said, "Okay." So now this is the funny story. So we get to a point where we have built an entire mock-up out here at the Van Nuys Airport under a soundstage. It's where we shot all the green screen stuff with Linda and with Eddie that we could then put into the 3D portion. Do you remember when they're running around and they're on the actual high-tech security cameras, and so that we can sync up the actors on stage?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
The actual images of Linda. So we did all that in green screen, and Jim and I were there that day, and that day we directed that together. Well, that's another funny story, because Jim was doing stuff out there, and then it comes to that day for the shoot, and he says, he sends me a message, "Come out to the stage." So I go to the stage. He goes, "Okay, so I'm thinking we're going to direct Linda and Eddie tomorrow, and what the hell are they doing? I have no idea. What are they doing?" And I said, "Well, yeah, because it's live action and everything." He says, "Well, all right, so just be here tomorrow, and you and I will work it out with them, and we'll do it together." I said, "Okay, no problem." So that's when we worked out. Because what Jim was saying is, I don't know what the live actors are going to be doing a year from now on that stage. So therefore, I don't know what Linda and Eddie are doing here. So I said, it's the only time, because Jim's used to doing it his way cinematically, but the night before the shoot, he made the connection that these guys have to be matching movements of live actors a year from now. So we worked that all out together, worked out each piece of it and shot it. As if it's being shot by security cams and stuff. And then when all the pieces were done, not finished, but we had the second act. It was basically edited. It was basically locked. We had the third act in the CG with the 3 screens basically locked. We had built all 3 screens in full size with a stage of full size. We had used them to shoot on a green screen before. Now we're using it to actually get a rough look at the show a year before it's going to open with all of the elements. So the 3D. We kept bringing in pieces in 2D and 3D, the film part, and checking them in 3D on these screens as they were being done. And we got to the point where everything was probably at about 95%, 90%, very, very few final touches. So we invited friends and family, all the people from Digital Dimension, probably about 100 people, Universal executives, stuff like that. And we did a kind of very workshop version of the entire show. We had the people come down on the cables. We had the Linda character come down the cable. We had the gunfire, all the stuff. We had the 3D screens. And we basically showed the entire show in rough form. Mm-hmm. And so Jim's 2D movie screened. Everybody loved it. Then the 3 screens went up, and then the big metal creature came out with the metal. So now the end of the as it ends, everyone crowds around Jim, and I'm over there next to Jim, and they come to Jim, and the first 3 or 4 people are like, "Oh my God, that was so cool when that metal thing came out, it went right in your face." The next person said, "That was so cool, that thing came out, and the thing came out, and the thing came out." And Kevin finally goes, "Did anyone see the movie that I made?" So that was the lesson of why things should come off in your face in an attraction. So we tried to enhance some of the 3D effects in the second act too. I never quite felt there's 2 moments that I didn't think we achieved what I wanted, which was when the first 100 killers come out. I wanted the scale to be slightly smaller so they would actually suspend in 3D space a little bit more for a second before they came over your heads, and also the Terminator skull that gets blasted out and comes flipping at you.
Yeah.
Remember that moment?
Yes.
Yeah.
I wanted that to be slower, and again, the scale broke the frame too soon. You didn't get that moment of hanging in space before it goes out.
Right.
But those are the only 2 things in the entire show that I really felt were we just didn't quite get those right, and we ran out of time to get them right. Everything else I think is pretty flawless. I think that the sound program, the oral program, at least when we opened it, was amazing. I mean, the sounds were all around you, and everything timed with the screen. It was beautiful. Mm-hmm. So
the other still really good.
The other side of the coin on T2 3D is, and same thing on Spider-Man is, remember, I've always been the outsider at Universal. I was never a Universal employee.
Right.
And that sometimes created depending on how you look at it, from the management side, a healthy competition. But it wasn't good for me because a lot of the Universal designers that are the heads of the company now were there back in the days when management would say, "Well, did you see what Goddard did? Did you see you should do what Goddard did?"
Yeah.
So, of course, you can imagine that really endeared me to everybody.
Yeah.
At that time, there was a group of designers who will remain nameless, who were very anti-T2 3D and thought it was going to be, quote, Gary's Titanic. Now that reference was, if you remember, before Titanic opened, everyone thought Jim Cameron was going to go down and take 20th Century Fox with him. The production was deemed out of control and all kinds of stuff. It didn't turn out that way, and of course, it didn't turn out that way for T2 3D either.
Exactly. I guess they were right, technically.
Yeah.
Yeah, they wound up being right. But there were rumors rampant that the show was awful. It wasn't going to come together. Blah blah blah. It didn't make sense. Da da da. A lot of these theme park attractions really don't come together to the last 2 or 3 weeks because there are so many moving parts to them. So part of my job during the course of T2 and Spider-Man was just to keep the projects alive as they were trying to be shot down by the internal designers at Universal. One of those designers actually said, after fighting both T2 and Spider-Man, but after both attractions were open and were hit, actually had gone on record as saying he didn't think 3D film attractions belonged in theme parks.
Huh?
And well, this is a guy with not a very good track record of theme park attractions. But
right.
Again, I'm not going to name him.
Yeah.
And there was another executive there who also fought tooth and nail on these attractions, and I think people were secretly hoping that I was going to go down in flames on these things. But even regardless of that, they truly didn't believe it would work. I kept having to prove things. And it did come to one big meeting. There was a meeting where I guess 2 or 3 of these designers had planned to confront me in front of a meeting with Jay Stein, Ron Benson, Barry Epson, all the top brass. And they started peppering me with questions, and I was answering them all. And then I realized it was getting ridiculous. Like, how do you know that the 3D is going to work in the back seat and the front seat? I said, because I know, because I've made 3D films. And he kept going on. It was getting ridiculous. I slammed my hand on the table, and I said, all right, let me just say this. There's one person in this room who has directed feature films, who has done 3D 4D attractions, who has done dark rides, who has done live entertainment, who has done Broadway theater, who has done every single thing that we are talking about here. And that's me. And none of you know what you're talking about, and I do. So here's what I'm saying. It will work. So, I mean, it came to that kind of confrontation.
Wow.
Yeah.
Of course, once again, I endeared myself to it. But, one thing about me is I care most about the attraction. In fact, Ty Granaroli is a good friend of mine and someone I brought up through the industry who's now got his own company, own designer. He said to me years ago, he said, you're the one guy in this industry that cares about the attractions more than the owner does. So I had to fight a lot to keep it alive, but I did, on that one I had a 2,000-pound gorilla, which was Jim Cameron. So I could always call Jim secretly and say, Jim, I could use you at this meeting next week because I think they're going to try and kill this or kill that or kill this. So Jim and I had our own little thing because Jim wanted to be quality, I wanted to be quality. And so Jim would show up for all these meetings where major decisions were going to go down, and I think sometimes they wondered, who called Jim? But no one would say who called Jim. I called Jim. But it was in the interest of saving the show and keeping it quality. I mean, there's some other things. Originally when we designed it, there were 6 of the. Remember, there's 6 now. There were 9. There were 3, 3, and 3 in the back. And when the budget cuts came, the 3 in the back went, along with a few other things. But one thing I have learned over the years is I really put in more than we need in everything we do now, because I always know management is going to want to cut the budget.
Right.
So we really fill it up with stuff so that we know we can cut that, and that, and still have a great attraction at the end of the day. But of course, we don't. Now I'm giving away my secrets, but hopefully none of the management listens to these reports. Only fans do. So then when management comes in, we fight for everything, but we reluctantly start giving up things so that we can be, good team players.
Yeah.
But we're giving up things that we know ahead of time that we can give up without sacrificing the end product. And if we don't have to sacrifice them, okay, all the better.
Yep.
But if that time comes, and it always does, we have some things that we know we can get rid of to bring the budget down without impairing the show. So let's see, what else? So we got into it was a battle all along the way. We had to, at one point, so we're probably 90% or 80% or 70% along the way with T2 3D. We have a big model of the theater. We figure out all the sight lines and all the projectors. And again, this is pre-digital, so it's all figuring out, 3 sets of 2 projectors showing 70-millimeter film in 3D. So we're probably in the initial planning stages of what's going to become Spider-Man. And this is the first time there's a moving ride system with 3D. And this is where everyone really said, okay, that's never going to work. I remember a big meeting. How are you going to see if you're on a ride? How is the 3D going to work? I said, guys, 3D is an illusion. It's your brain melding the images. And in the first stages of the Spider-Man ride, I'm jumping the Spider-Man part, right? We used an Omnimover system because never in my life at that point would I already know what they're going to spend on all of these projectors and all of the filming and all of the CGI. It's going to be crazy. So the initial concept were Omnimovers. But what Omnimovers lets you do, if you think of an Omnimover like in the Haunted Mansion, I can turn you to see what I want you to see, and then I can turn you away from it. So it was a different way. Instead of doing long-held shots with squinching, which is what happened later, this was a way where I could bring you into a set, turn you into the set with the screen when I wanted to, get my 3D effect, and then turn you away before that 3D effect is over, or when it's over, going to the next scene. So I was basically going to treat each person like a camera, basically. Basically you're getting the 3D moment, then I'm turning you onto the next thing you're going to look at. That was to save money. Then what happened was, the way it all came together as the final, that was when it was a 3D, 4D ride. So 4D effects, 3D, but with an Omnimover. Once we sold the concept and went forward, there was this critical moment right when they brought Scott Trowbridge on, where they were going to cancel it. They were going to cancel the 3D, 4D. They brought me on to create an alternative concept that would work. And I'd fought very hard. They brought me on again, I should say, because I'd done my part, and they were going to take over production internally. They took over production internally. I didn't know what was going on until like 9 months later. And I get told that the thinking of killing that concept, and they want another one from me. And I said, well, first of all, I disagree with you, but I'll create an alternative. I gave them all the reasons, because I grew up with superhero comics, and you got to have in-your-face action. The only way to have in-your-face action is to have 3D, because if you try and do it physically, it won't work. If you use 2D film, it won't work. All the reasons that I made the choice to use 3D as the prominent media for this ride. Okay, so if we can't do that, what can we do? So I said, well, finally, let's just emphasize the 4D effects. Let's put people on a moving motion base. That's what we call it, the scoop. And let's use 2D film, but let's make the whole thing about weather, about villains using the weather and stuff like that. So the original one had Sinister Six, pretty much as you see it today. Electro and Doc Ock and all those guys. So in this one, we had a couple villains, but we had them messing with the weather. So that the idea here was we were going to put you in a moving motion base. We're going to have 2D projection and physical sets all around you. But you're going to be affected by rain, snow, wind, lightning, all these things. So we made a very physical ride. I think we actually proposed that everyone had to have ponchos given out when you got on the ride, because it was bad weather. And so you put on ponchos because the intention was to get you wet and to have real snow machines throwing snow on you and having the wind hit you. I think the wind was going to be one of the first ones and the last ones. The last one being to act like a car wash almost, to blow a lot of the snow and water off you before you come out. So I went to make the presentation, and Scott Trowbridge had come. And I said, okay, I'm going to make this presentation, but I'm just going to say before I start, while I think this is a viable alternative and it's in your face in a different way, you're using the physical effects, the 4D effects without the 3D. I just want to say I think it's a mistake, and I think we should be doing the 3D ride. Da, da, da. Finished the presentation. Everyone was like, "Yeah, okay." And then they were like, suddenly it was like, I said, "Why aren't we doing the 3D?" Well, we just don't think the 3D is going to work. Blah blah blah. And Scott Trowbridge, who had just come on, I don't think he'd been there more than a month. And Scott, by the way, I gave him his first job in theme parks. He worked on Pureland in Tokyo. That was his first in the theme park industry. So I knew Scott. So Scott says, well, why wouldn't this work? And I mean, all these guys around the table were so negative. And now he's one of them. He's not an outsider like me. He's one of them. He's on Universal's payroll. And he's like, well, why wouldn't this work? Oh, well, this and that. And Scott says, no, there's no reason. Basically said everything I had said 9 months before. There's no reason this won't work, and blah, blah, blah. And so that led to, now I'm back to T2 and Spider-Man. So remember where we were in this phase. We were 60, 70% on T2, and we were probably 20, 30% on Spider-Man. And so Universal approved a budget to create a demonstration on a big soundstage. They actually got a soundstage. We taped out the T2 theater on the floor and put theaters in the worst seats on the four corners, down towards the screen at the very back, and in the center. We put like 8 or 10 chairs in the key places throughout to show that 3D would work equally well no matter where you were sitting in the theater, because that was the big question. What about the people sitting up front? What about the people sitting on the side? And I kept saying, it's 3D, guys. It comes to your face no matter where you are. It doesn't matter where you sit. But we had to prove it, so we did. We got a bunch of existing 3D footage all over town, off the screen 3D stuff, and we basically editors spliced it all together. And we created this reel of different stuff, of things coming at you and things going away from you in 3D. And we put it on all 3 screens. And we sat, Sid Sheinberg, Jay Stein, Ron Bensian, everybody, Phil Hedema, everyone sat in these seats and saw that from every vantage point in the theater, you got good 3D. So that was T2 3D. Now, we brought out these rolling chairs with wheels, and we put everybody in them, and we wheeled them around as the film was showing. We wheeled them through the place as if they were on a ride. So once again, they could see that the 3D worked. Even if you were moving, it still worked. And that day is where everything really finally got back on track. T2 3D got back on track, and Spider-Man got back on track, and everybody was convinced, at least on a basic level, that Gary was right, it will work. But it did take that, and I think that was a big crossroads moment. So T2 3D went ahead and maybe we're only 50% into it because we weren't into production yet. This was the big decision day before Universal had to push the button on a massive contract with Digital Main, and James Cameron and the movie and everything else. So that was a key moment, and it was also the moment that allowed Spider-Man to go forward as we had originally designed it.
Awesome. I mean, Spider-Man is still phenomenal, but I would say, Gary, I don't think the attraction's as good with the 4K digital projection it is now as it was with the old film projection. For that conversation, like what we said earlier, that I don't think you get that coming out in your face element with the 4K digital projection now that you used to on the old one.
I only went on the digital one once. I think it was it 2 summers ago, I think? 2 Novembers ago, during IAPA, I think I went on it. It was right after they made the change. Was that two years ago?
I think it might have been 2012, actually. 2012 or 2012. Yeah, it was summer of 2012.
I think I went on maybe I think it was that year. Maybe it was 2013. I can't remember. Anyway, I missed IAPA 1 year. I think I was in New York. But I thought that the images were still impressive in the digital version. It's funny. You've probably seen it more times than me since it opened. But I thought the digital versions. What I was afraid of is that they wouldn't meld as well with the sets and the lighting. But I think they still melded pretty well. Yeah. That was my biggest concern. I think Spider-Man's still the best of these rides. No one else. What I've learned is 3 things. People doing these rides don't understand the importance of the off-the-screen 3D. They don't understand how to cheat time. They don't realize that in the best of these 3D things, and the ones that I do, I cheat time. Those arms come out almost in slow motion at you, even though there's a fast pace to the scene. If you ever saw the Sensorium, when the baseball pitcher throws the baseball right at you like he's pitching, that is an optical effect. We added that baseball later, and it comes at you in slow motion, and it hangs in space. It hangs right in front of your nose, and then crack, you hear the back, and you're back into real time. What I find is audiences will let you cheat time on those 3D effects without something about the brain. The brain accepts the fact that this is a moment where we're involved in this and time is stopping, and bang, you're back in the attraction or your storyline, and they're right with you. No one thinks, oh, that's weird. Why did everything stop for 2 seconds while that thing happened? No one thinks that at all, because you're focused on the actual 3D element. And also the best 3D elements come at you. The baseball works incredibly. What no one understands about the T1 million is, because those tentacles begin stretching and come at you, your brain is already kind of filling in frames. You know it's coming at you. And so therefore, you accept the fact it's coming at you, and it enhances the 3D all that much more. It's why a very fast-moving 3D thing doesn't work as well. Your brain doesn't have time for your eyes to connect those things. So you get a bit of a rush, because it's like, whoosh, it's going right past you. But you don't get that moment of something hanging in space, which you really want. Those are the moments when you see people reaching in space for things that aren't there.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important. And if you look at even the Harry Potter stuff, I haven't seen the latest one here in LA yet, but I hear they went 3D, so I'm anxious to see it.
Yes. I
always thought of the first one, in the first one, and I told them, I said, dude, those 2D screens don't work. It just takes you out of the reality. You're in a physical set, and now you're in this 2D screen. You're in a physical set, this 2D screen. It doesn't work. It's jarring. If you did them 3D, at least it would retain the sense of dimensionality of the spaces you're in. So apparently up here, they went 3D. Now, whether they brought anything off the screen, I don't know. But there's 3 things to making a great 3D, 4D attraction. One is that you have what I'm calling suspended time moments, where things come at you in the context of the show that hopefully, consciously, you guys, even though you've seen it a lot, maybe you haven't even been aware of it, but now you are. When you think about it, you'll be aware of it. Oh yeah, that thing kind of hangs out there for a minute, and then bang, back into action, right? Mm-hmm. Secondly, the pacing of a 3D, 4D show or ride has to be paced like any successful movie or any successful Broadway show. And there's a lot of unsuccessful movies and unsuccessful Broadway shows. And my experience with most 3D, 4D rides right now is they don't understand pacing. They do not understand that you have to keep the pacing going. You have to keep the audience in their world of suspended belief, or it just doesn't work. You have dead spots. You have dead spots in certain very new rides right now. Again, I'm not going to name them, but it's like the people doing these are technicians and don't understand how you pace a story. And it reminds me that I think I'm the only designer in this business that was a successful director on stage and film and TV. And so I just think it comes down to, I think of these things differently. I think of each of these things as a total experience, and everything has to work to achieve a suspension of belief that starts from the moment you go and doesn't end until you get out. And you have to keep people in that world like a successful movie does, like a successful Broadway show does. And I don't think it's any different. But I think sometimes a lot of people in the theme park world think, oh, it's a 3D, 4D ride. So we have a ride, we have some 3D screens, and off we go. And it's just not that easy, not to do it well. There's a lot of bad stuff out there, just like there's a lot of bad movies and bad Broadway shows, but there's not a lot of really good ones.
Yeah. Right, well, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with Gary with some listener-submitted questions. Ladies and gentlemen, the eighth wonder of the world is returning to Universal Orlando Resort. So let our friends at Fairy Godmother Travel take care of the resort reservation. They are a Universal Parks and Resorts specialist, as well as being an authorised Disney vacation planner, and their service is free to you. From the awesome Cabana Bay Hotel to those other hotels run by a mouse, Fairy Godmother Travel can book all your Orlando vacation needs, so you don't need to miss the chance to see the amazing King Kong in the flesh. And please make sure to let them know that you heard about Fairy Godmother Travel because of UUOP. Because every UUOP referral helps us to continue to bring you the greatest Universal coverage. Contact them today by phone at 832-284-4002 or toll free at 888-939-642539 or go to fairygodmothertravel.com.
Let Fairy Godmother Travel make your next vacation magical.
We now return you to your regularly scheduled programming.
Welcome back, everyone, and it's now time for some listener-submitted questions from the Producers Club. Hunter, do you want to go with the first one?
Sure. The first one's from Joe Espada, and his question is, when considering a show that uses live actors, how difficult is it to cast actors and stunt people for a show that requires a specific look in order to match audience expectations of what those real actors look like, such as the iconic Arnold Schwarzenegger? In addition, have enough people hired to cover multiple shifts or cover for an actor that might not be able to make it to work for one reason or another?
Okay, so I can answer that from when we first opened the show, and this is what happens in theme parks, and I want to say fairly to the operations people that operations people have a very challenging time to keep these shows up and operating all the time, and so when we opened Terminator 2 3D, all of the Arnold lookalikes actually had appliances. They had jaw appliances that were added to their jaws to give him his square jaw. They had to meet a certain height requirement. The good thing was with the Terminator, once you take a fairly large, muscled, guy at Arnold's height, and you comb his hair back, you put the sunglasses on, and you add that one appliance, the jaw, when he's lit properly from the stage distance, because you don't have film, you have distance working for you on the stage, it actually worked really well. Sadly, within the first year, they started losing the jaw appliances. Either the actors got tired of doing it, or it was, so this is what happens. Things get degraded. But I can tell you when we opened the show, the Johns that we had, the Linda Hamiltons that we had, and the Arnold lookalikes, the appliances, they were pretty darn good. There were people in the theater, unsophisticated people that just regular audience members, who actually thought that was Arnold on the stage. They thought those were the stars. They thought it was them. And that was fantastic, when you get that kind of reaction. Because someone actually asked, how did you get Arnold Schwarzenegger to do this? I go, you mean the movie? No, the whole thing. That was not him on the stage.
That's quite amusing.
But I love the fact that audiences believe that someone like Arnold Schwarzenegger might actually be taking that gig, 8 shows a day, I don't
Yeah.
think so. It's great that they think that. So the question is that it's not easy. The way the Universal Studios thing worked, it would be easier in Hollywood because there's a lot of actors here in Hollywood.
Yes.
And I don't know if Universal still works the same way, but the way they used to is you got paid per show, and they allowed you to change shifts with them because they knew they had people that were all want to be actors, movie, TV actors. These are people who wanted to make it. So they had made it easy for them to arrange their schedules to go to auditions. As long as you covered your shift with someone else who was trained, if you suddenly had an audition tomorrow at 3 o'clock and you were on the 3 o'clock shift, if you phoned to your supervisor and said, I've got an audition tomorrow, I can't make it, but Joe Blow is, taking my place and he'll confirm that with you, then they were fine. So that allowed us to keep a lot of very talented people in the shows here in Hollywood because it was a job you could take, make enough money to actually pay your bills, but have the flexibility to go on auditions when you needed to. So that was a big motivator for actors and actresses here that were trying to, make their careers happen.
Really
In
cool.
Florida, we didn't have the same luxury, but at least when we opened the show, I can tell you we had a great set of cast members that really looked like the characters. What happens after that first year? The person who asked the question, it's a very good point. It gets increasingly difficult to find people that continue to match their roles. In addition to that, in Broadway, they bring in the original director every 3-4 months to touch up the show again and to give notes because actors tend to change things. At theme parks, they don't do that. I've never been brought in to look at a T2 show and say, wow, this has changed a lot. Why don't we fix the staging? Let's get back to what was intended. Let's get the pacing back. Never. They don't do that, and I think that's a discredit to the theme park industry. They don't take it that seriously. They assign project managers and wannabe directors and wannabe, and it's just not their thing. And I don't mean that as a put down to the people who do it. I just mean, for some reason in theme parks, they don't apply the same level of standards to ongoing performance as you would in Broadway or as you would in making a motion picture. And I think one of the differences with me is I don't treat them any different. That's a very important thing. If you look at the script for T2 3D, we do not pander or talk down to the audience. Now, in more recent years, theme park people have changed the pre-show and the Q show, and they've added in a lot of cutesy, what I call typical theme park stuff, which I actually hate. I feel it plays down to the intelligence of the audience, and it panders to them, and they're cheap gags, cheap jokes. And we didn't do that in the first attraction. And the first attraction got the highest ratings of any attraction ever done by Universal. Off the chart ratings that the management couldn't even believe. And I believe it's because we appealed to the intelligence of the audience. We didn't speak down to them. We created an attraction that was true to the mythology, true to the characters. It still had laughs. I will say, James Cameron, he added most of the laugh lines. The laugh lines in the film were Jim's because he knows those characters inside and out.
Yeah.
But we did it in a way that was more motion picture-like and less theme park-like. So I feel that generally a lot of the attractions today have a low bar in terms of how they're written. I'm so sick of these puns and plays on words and typical theme park stuff. By the way, that's not funny. It doesn't generate a laugh usually. It generates maybe a slight grimace, groan, or chuckle. The only place that we went for the theme park thing, again, was with the pre-show, with the woman with her super, but we did it on purpose. I wanted to put a kind of a caricature of that typical theme park person in that role. Of course, she gets her just desserts. She gets choked to death by the T-1000. So, I think that's an issue, and I think that along with that issue of not writing down to the audience, how do you keep the standards up? How do you get the right actors in the roles? It's a very good question. It's not easy, and I think that's an area that theme parks could actually improve on. The first year is usually right pretty good because the original creators are involved and they push hard to get the best people they can. Next.
Next is from Alicia Stella. And she would like to know, how did you come up with the idea for 3 screens for the last act of the show? I remember it blowing my mind the first time I saw it, and it still floors me every time. Now, other theme park shows use this concept all the time, like Mickey's PhilharMagic, for example, but was T2 3D the first to use it?
Yes. To my knowledge, T2 3D was the first to use it.
Cool.
The actual, I think as I mentioned earlier, the actual idea was to originally surround you with 360 degrees, but then we realized we didn't need the back screens, and also that's one of those budget cutting things that I told you about. So, okay, we'll lose these screens, but we should keep these screens.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole idea was to have 3 screens, but not let you know there were screens. You know, they tried to talk me into having, you know, no wall and then just to have a curtain. I said, no, you got to have a physical wall that moves. People can't see curtains because they'll think, oh, there's a screen behind there. It has to be an actual surprise. It has to be like, what is going on? What is happening? Mm-hmm. And so the idea for the 3 screens was, again, so imagine you're a creative guy and you're thinking 360. You're going to have this thing going all around. Okay, well, that's not going to work, and people can't twist to look behind them anyway, so let's lose that. But let's not use the side thing, because what we want to do is we want to take people's eyesight from when Jim's movie is over, meaning a movie that has close-ups and tracking shots and panning shots and everything. That's the vocabulary of the movie. But when we go to this next act, we don't have close-ups. It's all in real scale. So that T1 million is in real scale to the building, and the actors now that are on there are in real scale when we do the little transition thing. So we're not going to be able to use close-ups. So what we want to do is wrap this around the audience and really feel they're in the middle of it, and have our live actors running from place to place, side to side, through the audience as this thing. Because the whole idea is those tentacles aren't really reaching out for you. They're reaching out for our actors, and for the Arnold, for the T2 character, Terminator, and for Eddie. But you're in the way. So that was the conceit for that. So the idea for the 3-screen 3D was our reduced idea from the 360 3D. But from day one, we knew, well, not from day one, maybe not from day one when we thought of a motorcycle coming to the screen, but very, very soon after that was the idea of the 3-screen 3D that would surround you. And to our knowledge, no one had surrounded people in 3D. And so I thought that was going to be a very cool thing. And it turns out it was.
Definitely. And our next one is here. It's from Kerry Williams. And he says, whose idea was it for the seat drop, and how did that come about?
Yeah, that's a really interesting story. The seat drop wasn't in there, but the seat rising was in there. So what would happen is when we start going down in the elevator, I wanted the seats to go up to make you feel like you're going up. And I'm sorry, not going up, going down. So that you feel like you're going down, 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 down. When the explosion happened, I suddenly realized we need a drop, but we hadn't built a drop in. But then I asked the guys on the thing, I said, well, it goes up, 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 up. Is there a way to just drop it from where it was? And it turns out there was. If they just turned the little wheel that's doing that, they turned it one more notch, bang, it went back to its original resting place. So I said, okay, I want you to do that. I timed the LN2. I said, I want you to do it right here. And he did it. It was awesome. Now, let me tell you, though, where I first suggested that idea. We did a Phantom of the Opera concept many, many years before for the original Phantom of the Opera stage here in Hollywood, where the actual Lon Chaney Phantom of the Opera was filmed. I think it was stage 33 or something. Anyway, we designed this whole show. And the end of the show, the finale, was dropping seats, real dropping seats. And that show never got built. And then Ron Bension, when they did the fire attraction over here, based on whatever that fire movie was, which I wasn't involved in, they used the dropping seat idea that I had created, but instead of a seat, you're all standing on a railing, and at one point it drops. So they had used it there. But that actually came from the Phantom of the Opera show, and that's where the first idea was. And when that LN2 came out, I knew we needed one more thing. And thank God, the way those seats were built, it was a mechanical lift, and therefore we could drop it. And that was the absolute final moment we needed to make that whole thing work. It worked great.
I forget about that every time I go on the ride.
That's good. Just forget about it because you're rising during that elevator drop. We're making you feel like the force of going down is there. So we're actually prepping you for that drop.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yes.
Did that answer it in total?
Yep.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
think so, yeah.
All right. So
Next, no more? There's no more questions?
One more. We've got one more.
One
I think
more.
we're going to take.
this one's from Mr. Craig Lucas. He says, "Hi Gary, as T2 3D is obviously set in the T2 time frame, is there anywhere else in the Terminator timeline you'd like to have put the experience? I enjoyed the reach back of the last movie where they overlapped the first movie. Would you have picked any of the other movies in the franchise to represent in the attraction?"
Well, back then there was only Terminator and T2. So, and as I think I mentioned at the outset, we were limited to only doing we had to base our story on T2 and specifically not on Terminator, the first movie, because two different rights holders and two different studios control those films, and we only had T2.
Yeah.
So that wasn't an option. If I was to say today, well, see, it's all a matter of timing. That was the exact right movie to make at that time.
Yes.
It picked up with Eddie. It picked up with him at his age, like he would have been had he lived those same years. So, no, at that time, I wouldn't have changed anything. It was the exact right movie to make at that time based upon the mythology as it existed. If I was asked to do a Terminator attraction today, then I'm not sure what the answer. I'd have to do what I did before. I have to go immerse myself in all the latest films, pick the most compelling story elements, and say, okay, this is a cool idea. And by the way, in case you have not noticed, in Jurassic Park and T2, I don't try and recreate anything in a movie because I think you can't make the movie, you can't do it better than the movie, so don't try. We pick a parallel storyline, or in the case of T2-3, a slightly future storyline. But what is important is you have to respect the audience and write intelligently. You can't write little theme park crap, little stupid puns and dumb things. You have to respect the audience, respect the mythology. You have to hit the same emotional buttons. The trick to T2-3D is that we actually do put you in the world of Terminator as you know it. We hit all the same emotional buttons. We give you the visuals and the sounds and the music. We give all the things that you associate with the Terminator world, with the Terminator mythology, and yet it's not that movie. It's its own little branch of that movie. And I think that's what makes it interesting. I think that's what theme parks should be. Theme parks should be taking you to new worlds with surprises, but you have to respect the source material. You have to respect the characters and mythology. I mean, if I did a Jurassic Park thing today with the new movie, obviously it has a whole different feeling than the first movies.
Yeah.
And you want to pick up on that, and you want to deliver that in the new attraction.
Right.
Definitely. Right. Well,
hey, aren't you going to read that other one where he says I'm the best designer in the world?
everybody knows that, Gary, already.
So read that one so your fans can hear it, or do we run out of time?
I think everybody already
Actually,
knows that.
Believe it or not, we've got one of those. Alicia's email that we cut off. Let me just do it really quick here.
Go on then.
Thanks for letting me ask a question, and thanks to Goddard for coming up with my favorite ride concepts in theme parks. From the idea of a moving motion base in front of 3D screens for Spider-Man to the unused concept of an employee being attacked on Jurassic Park, he's my favorite designer in the theme park world. And that is not a lie, that's from Alicia.
There's nothing like a bit of fan service. Well, we got quite a few questions, but we are running a bit long, so we've sort of picked a few of them that a lot of them have been kind of answered already, Gary. So basically, just wanted to say thanks for taking the time to come and talk to us, Gary. It has been an absolute blast because that ride is phenomenal and an attraction. It's an attraction, not a ride, and it deserves to still have a place in that theme park. And I for one, I'm glad it still is there.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, and I'm sorry that my answers are so short and brief.
You'll just have to work on expanding them for next time, Gary.
I'll try and pad it next time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, in the meantime, if you want to see what Gary's Goddard Group are up to, you can go onto their website, which is thegoddardgroup.com, or you can find them on Facebook or follow them on Twitter at Goddard_group.
Yeah, on the Facebook site, put a like down and add your voice.
Because cool, I know you spend a lot of time posting like the original concepts for stuff. That's kind of where the idea for having you on to talk about Jurassic Park came on, because you'd been posting all the original concept art for that attraction. It is fascinating.
Well, we try and put things up there that are interesting to the industry, you know, from past, present, and future.
Cool, brilliant. Right. Quick one before we finish. Don't forget, UK listeners, do please go to iTunes and subscribe and leave a rating and review, and you will be in with a chance to win a $25 Universal gift card. But that is going to wrap up the 196th episode of the unofficial Universal Orlando podcast. So for our fantastic guest, Gary, of course, Tracy, Darren and Hunter, I have been Lee, and this has been the unofficial Universal Orlando podcast.
That's it for another unofficial Universal Orlando podcast. Make sure you never miss a show by subscribing on iTunes, and while you're there, please leave us a rating and a review. Listen to us on Stitcher, Google Play, and all your podcast apps. Email us with any questions or comments to podcast@uuopodcast.com, or even better, record your message at speakpipe.com/uuopodcast. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Pinterest, keyword UUO Podcast. Check out our blog for even more content at uuopodcast.com. And finally, our sponsors, Fairy Godmother Travel, are here to help with all your Universal vacation needs. So check them out today at fairygodmothertravel.com. Well, that's a wrap. See you next week.